It was a scorching summer day in Jaipur, Rajasthan, the air thick with heat. City Park hummed with activity, families lounged under sprawling banyan trees, couples whispered by the rose gardens, and children zipped down paths on bicycles. Constable Jack Wilson patrolled, his khaki uniform clinging to his sweat-soaked skin. Jack, a brash young officer, wore his badge with a swagger, believing it set him above the crowd. The sun bored him senseless, and his eyes roamed for a distraction. Near the Lotus Fountain, a group of college girls giggled, snapping selfies. One caught his eye, a slender girl in a flowing yellow skirt, her hair glinting in the sunlight. Jack's lips twisted into a sly grin. "Let's have some fun," he murmured, adjusting his cap. He strolled over, walkie-talkie swinging at his hip. The girls were oblivious to his approach. Without pausing to think, Jack flicked his walkie-talkie, lightly lifting the hem of the girl's skirt. A silly prank, he thought, just a bit of harmless mischief. The park seemed to hush. The girl froze mid-laugh, her expression unreadable. Slowly, she turned, her gaze piercing Jack's. No words, just an icy calm. She reached into her bag, pulled out an ID, and handed it to him. Jack's smirk vanished as he read the name, Emily Parker. His heart sank. Parker? As in Commissioner Richard Parker? The park spun around him. His pulse raced as the weight of his mistake settled in. One foolish gesture, and he'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. What had he just done? Jack Wilson stood rooted to the spot, Emily Parker's ID burning in his hand. The park's lively chatter faded into a dull hum as his mind raced. Commissioner Richard Parker was a legend in Jaipur's police force, a man whose name commanded respect and fear. His daughter, Emily, now stood before Jack, her eyes sharp with quiet fury. The other girls whispered, their phones forgotten, sensing the tension. Jack stammered, I didn't mean anything by it, miss. Just a joke. Emily's lips tightened, but she said nothing, her silence louder than any shout. She took back her ID, her fingers brushing his with deliberate calm. You'll hear about this, she said softly, her voice like a blade. Jack's throat went dry. He watched her walk away, her yellow skirt swaying, the crowd parting for her. His chest tightened as he realized the gravity of his blunder. He'd seen officers disciplined for less, far less. The sun felt hotter now, oppressive, as if mocking his stupidity. Back at his post, Jack's mind replayed the moment. Why hadn't he thought it through? He'd grown too comfortable, too cocky, thinking his uniform made him untouchable. Now, one reckless act had put him in the crosshairs of the most powerful man in the department. His radio crackled, but he barely heard it. His colleagues at the station would be buzzing soon. Gossip spread fast. Jack wiped his brow, the weight of Emily's last name pressing down on him. He glanced at the fountain, its water sparkling mockingly. One prank, 1 second, and his career hung by a thread. What would Commissioner Parker do to him? Jack Wilson's shift ended, but relief never came. The park's vibrant energy felt distant as he trudged to the police station, Emily Parker's words echoing in his mind, "You'll hear about this." His stomach churned. Jaipur's streets, alive with rickshaws and vendors, blurred past him. At the station, officers chatted casually, but Jack felt their glances, sharp, knowing. Word had spread. He checked his phone, no messages, no warnings. Yet the air felt heavy, like a storm brewing. As he hung his cap, a junior officer approached. "Wilson, Commissioner wants you. Now." Jack's heart sank. He nodded, forcing a neutral expression, and headed to the top floor. The elevator ride felt eternal, each ding amplifying his dread. Commissioner Richard Parker's office loomed at the corridor's end, its oak door imposing. Jack knocked, his knuckles trembling. "Enter," came a calm, deep voice. Inside, Parker sat behind his desk, his face unreadable. No shouting, no theatrics, just a piercing stare that made Jack feel small. "Sit," Parker said, gesturing to a chair. Jack obeyed, his uniform suddenly feeling like a costume. "Do you know why you're here?" Parker asked, his tone even but heavy. Jack swallowed, nodding. "Emily, your daughter." "I made a mistake, sir." It was a stupid joke. Parker leaned back, his eyes never leaving Jack's. A joke, he repeated, the word sharp. He slid a file across the desk, Jack's service record. You've been reckless before, Wilson. This isn't your first misstep. Jack's pulse quickened. He opened his mouth to explain, but Parker raised a hand. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., disciplinary hearing. Be there. The dismissal was cold, final. Jack stood, legs weak, knowing his fate was slipping away. Jack Wilson left Commissioner Parker's office, the weight of the impending hearing crushing him. Jaipur's evening buzz, streetlights flickering on, hawkers calling out, felt like another world. He walked home, the city's chaos unable to drown his thoughts. Emily Parker's face, her calm fury, haunted him. One flick of his walkie-talkie, one moment of stupidity, and now his career teetered on the edge. At his small apartment, Jack tossed his keys onto the table, the clink echoing in the quiet. Sleep was impossible. He sat on his couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying the park incident. Why had he thought it was funny? He'd seen Emily's ID, her last name glaring like a warning sign. Parker. He knew the commissioner's reputation, strict, unforgiving, a stickler for ethics. Jack's record wasn't spotless, minor infractions, late reports, a few complaints, but nothing like this. He opened a beer, the cold bottle grounding him briefly. His phone buzzed with messages from colleagues. What happened? Heard you're in trouble. He ignored them. Gossip was the last thing he needed. Instead, he Googled Emily Parker. Her social media was private, but a few public posts showed her at charity events, always poised, her father's pride evident. Jack groaned, rubbing his face. He'd underestimated her, thinking she was just another college girl. Now, he faced a disciplinary hearing, and Parker's influence loomed large. Would he lose his badge? His savings were meager, his rent due soon. The clock ticked past midnight, each second pulling him closer to 9 a.m. Jack lay down, but his mind raced. One prank, one name, and his world was unraveling. What would he say to save himself? Morning broke over Jaipur, the sun painting the sky in hues of orange. Jack Wilson barely noticed. He'd hardly slept, his mind trapped in a loop of regret and fear. The disciplinary hearing was hours away, and his apartment felt like a cage. He showered, the cold water failing to shake his dread. In his uniform, he looked in the mirror, once a source of pride, now a reminder of his mistake. Jaipur's streets were waking up as he headed to the station. Rickshaws honked, vendors set up stalls, but Jack's focus was on the looming meeting. At the station, officers avoided his gaze, their whispers cutting deeper than shouts. He checked his watch, 8:45 a.m. The hearing room was on the second floor, a place he'd never entered. He paced outside, clutching a crumpled apology he'd written at dawn. It felt inadequate. What could he say to Commissioner Parker? It was a joke wouldn't cut it. Emily's face flashed in his mind, her calm, piercing stare as she handed him her ID. He'd misjudged her, thinking she'd laugh it off. Now, her father held his fate. The door opened, and a clerk motioned him in. The room was stark, a long table, 3 senior officers, and Commissioner Parker at the head. His expression was stone, unyielding. Jack's heart pounded as he took his seat, the air thick with tension. Constable Wilson, Parker began, his voice low, you've been charged with conduct unbecoming an officer. Explain yourself. Jack's mouth went dry. His apology felt flimsy, his career hanging by a thread. He took a breath, knowing his next words could either save him or seal his doom. Jack Wilson sat under the cold gaze of Commissioner Richard Parker, the hearing room suffocatingly silent. The 3 senior officers flanking Parker scribbled notes, their faces unreadable. Jack's crumpled apology sat in his pocket, useless now. He cleared his throat, voice shaky. Sir, I made a terrible mistake. It was meant as a prank, nothing more. I didn't know who she was. Parker's eyes narrowed, cutting through Jack's words like a knife. You think her identity matters? He asked, his tone icy. You disrespected a civilian, Wilson. My daughter or not, you crossed a line. Jack's stomach twisted. He nodded, sweat beading on his forehead. The other officers exchanged glances, their pens pausing. Jack tried again. I take full responsibility, sir. I've served 3 years, no major infractions. I'm asking for a chance to make this right. Parker leaned forward, his voice steady but sharp. You wore our uniform, Wilson. That demands respect, not pranks. He slid a document forward, Jack's incident report, detailing the park encounter. Emily's statement was there, concise and damning. He lifted my skirt without consent. Jack's face burned as he read it. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in. One officer, a stern woman, spoke up. Constable, your record shows minor issues, tardiness, attitude. This isn't isolated. Jack wanted to argue but held his tongue. Parker tapped the table. We'll deliberate. Wait outside. Jack stood, legs unsteady, and stepped into the hall. The door clicked shut behind him. Jaipur's morning sun streamed through a window, mocking his turmoil. He leaned against the wall, pulse racing. One mistake, one name, Emily Parker, and his future hung in the balance. What would the verdict be? Jack Wilson leaned against the hallway wall, the station's hum a distant drone. Jaipur's morning light filtered through dusty windows, but it offered no warmth. His mind replayed the hearing, Commissioner Parker's piercing stare, the officer's cold scrutiny, Emily's damning statement. His apology had felt hollow, his excuses weaker still. The door creaked open, and the clerk summoned him back. Jack's heart thudded as he re-entered the hearing room. The 3 officers sat stone-faced, their notes stacked neatly. Parker's expression was unreadable, his hands folded. Constable Wilson, he began, his voice steady, your actions disgraced this department. Respect is the foundation of our duty. You violated that. Jack's throat tightened, but he nodded, eyes fixed on the table. Parker continued, however, your record shows potential, 3 years of service, no major prior offenses. A flicker of hope sparked in Jack's chest, but Parker's next words cut through. That doesn't excuse your conduct. Effective immediately, you're suspended for 3 months without pay. You'll also attend mandatory ethics training. The woman officer added, one more misstep, Wilson, and you're out. Jack exhaled, relief mixing with shame. Suspension wasn't dismissal, but it stung. His savings were thin, 3 months would be brutal. Parker stood, signaling the end. Learn from this, or you won't wear that uniform again. Jack mumbled, yes, sir, and left, the doors thud final. Outside, Jaipur bustled on, indifferent to his turmoil. He thought of Emily, her calm fury, and Parker's warning. One prank had cost him dearly, not his job, but his pride, his reputation. The park incident would follow him, a stain no training could erase. Could he redeem himself, or was this the beginning of the end? Jack Wilson stepped out of the station into Jaipur's relentless heat, the suspension notice burning in his pocket. The city pulsed around him, rickshaws weaving, vendors shouting, but he felt detached, like a ghost in his own life. 3 months without pay. His small apartment, his bills, his groceries, how would he manage? The shame stung worse. Colleagues' whispers followed him, their eyes avoiding his. Word of his prank on Emily Parker had spread like wildfire. At a roadside chai stall, Jack sipped tea, ignoring curious glances. His phone buzzed with texts, some mocking, others pitying. He silenced it, staring at the steaming glass. Emily's face haunted him, her calm, piercing gaze as she handed him her ID. He'd underestimated her, thinking his uniform gave him power. Now, it felt like a noose. Back home, Jack scrolled through social media. A local news blog had picked up the story, officer suspended after park incident. No names, but the details were unmistakable. Comments tore into him, disgraceful. Fire him. His chest tightened. He'd been careless, cocky, but this? His career, his identity, was unraveling. He called his friend Rowan, a fellow constable. It's bad, man, Rowan said. Parker's furious, but you got off light. Most expected termination. Jack nodded, though Rohan couldn't see. Light felt like a lie, 3 months unpaid, ethics training, a tarnished record. He thought of Commissioner Parker's words, learn from this. But how? The park, the fountain, Emily's skirt, it replayed endlessly. Jaipur's evening call to prayer echoed outside, grounding him briefly. He had to survive this, proof he wasn't that reckless fool. But could he outrun the shadow of Emily Parker's name? Jack Wilson woke to Jaipur's morning cacophony, honking rickshaws, distant temple bells. His suspension had begun, and his apartment felt emptier, the silence heavy with regret. 3 months without pay loomed like a mountain. He checked his bank account. Barely enough for rent and food. Emily Parker's name still lingered, a reminder of his folly. He couldn't undo the park incident, but he could try to rebuild. The mandatory ethics training started next week, a grim prospect, but Jack saw a sliver of opportunity. Maybe he could show he'd changed. He spent the day scouring job boards for part-time work, security gigs, delivery, anything to survive the suspension. At a local cafe, he overheard gossip about that officer and shrank into his seat. The city seemed to know his shame. That evening, Jack visited his parents' home, a modest house on Jaipur's outskirts. His mother's warm hug couldn't hide her worry. "You're better than this, Jack," she said softly. His father, a retired clerk, was blunt, "You disrespected someone's daughter. Fix yourself." Their words stung, but they fueled him. Back home, Jack pulled out his old police manuals, dusting off notes on conduct and duty. He'd taken the uniform for granted, thinking it made him untouchable. Now, he saw it differently, a symbol of trust, not power. He wrote a letter to Emily, an apology he'd never send, pouring out his regret for his thoughtless act. It felt hollow, but it was a start. Jaipur's stars glittered outside, indifferent to his struggle. The ethics training loomed, a chance to prove he could change. Could he earn back the respect he'd lost, or would Emily Parker's name haunt him forever? Jack Wilson stood outside the ethics training center in Jaipur, the morning sun harsh but hopeful. 3 months had passed since the park incident, each day a battle to reclaim his dignity. The suspension had drained his savings, but he'd scraped by with a part-time security job. Emily Parker's name no longer woke him in a cold sweat, though the lesson lingered. Inside, the training room buzzed with officers, some defiant, others humbled. Jack listened intently as the instructor spoke of duty, respect, and accountability, words that once felt abstract but now hit hard. He took notes, asked questions, surprising even himself with his focus. His colleagues noticed, one whispering, "Didn't expect this from you, Wilson." Back on duty, Jack patrolled with a new mindset. The uniform felt heavier, a reminder of trust, not power. At City Park, the fountain sparkled, no longer mocking him. He avoided the college crowd but caught sight of Emily once, laughing with friends. She didn't notice him, and he didn't approach. Her forgiveness wasn't his to demand. Commissioner Parker called him in weeks later. "You've shown effort, Wilson," he said, his tone less cold. "Don't waste it." Jack nodded, gratitude mixing with resolve. Jaipur's vibrant chaos, its markets, temples, and rickshaws, felt like home again. He wasn't the cocky officer anymore. One prank, one name, had reshaped him. The stain on his record remained, but he'd earned a second chance. As he walked the park's paths, Jack vowed to honor his badge, not flaunt it. Dear friends, if this story moved you, hit like and subscribe for more. There's plenty of drama and lessons ahead.